On June 20th, 1968, a Spanish fishing boat named Fausto set sail from the island of La Palma, one of the Canary Islands, heading south toward El Hierro, about 80 kilometers away. On board were three fishermen, brothers Ramon and Eliberto Hernandez, and their cousin, Miguel Acosta. It was supposed to be a routine trip. Nothing unusual, nothing out of the ordinary. They'd made this exact journey hundreds of times before, on the same boat, following the same route. Ever since they were young men working in the fishing trade, navigating the waters between the islands of the archipelago. But what no one knew that day was that this trip, which seemed so ordinary at first, would go on to become one of the strangest and most infamous maritime disappearance cases in history. A mystery that would trigger one of the largest search and rescue operations Spain had ever seen. Welcome. Today, I'm going to tell you the chilling story of the Fausto, the boat that didn't just go missing once, but twice. A story that will leave you with goosebumps and questions that remain unanswered to this day. Now listen closely, for the details make the story. Fausto was owned by a man named Rafael Acosta and was usually operated by four men. The Hernandez brothers, Ramon and Eliberto, along with their cousins Miguel and Viterbo Acosta. All of them were in their 40s, seasoned fishermen who'd been working at sea since they were kids, considered top-class seamen in the Canary Islands. Now on July 20th, the island of La Palma was buzzing with local festivities. Because of that, all fishing boats were given the day off. But the Fausto, being relatively larger than the others, had been hired by someone to transport a small shipment of goods to the island of El Hierro. The crew agreed immediately. They knew this route like the back of their hand. The job was simple: deliver a load of agricultural explosives used to break up rocks or flatten rugged land, something fairly common in mountainous regions of the islands. But at the very last minute, Viterbo dropped out. He had promised some friends he'd help them set up for the festival events happening back on La Palma, and just like that, the boat departed with only 3 men on board, heading south toward El Hierro. A few hours later, they arrived safely at the port of El Hierro. Everything went as planned. They unloaded the cargo, grabbed a meal, and began preparing for the return trip. But just as they were getting ready to leave, they saw someone running toward them from a distance, waving his arms like crazy. The man looked panicked, desperate. His name was Julio Garcia, a 27-year-old irrigation equipment technician living on the island with his wife and 2 kids. He was originally from La Palma, just like the Fausto's crew. Breathless and visibly shaken, he shouted, "My daughter, she's only 2 years old. My wife just called. She's seriously ill. Her condition's getting worse, and she needs antibiotics urgently. Her life's in danger." He had rushed to the harbor, hoping to catch the ferry back to La Palma, but he missed it by just minutes. Now he was frantically searching for any way to get home to his little girl. Without hesitation, the 3 fishermen replied, "We're headed to La Palma right now. That's our home too. Don't worry about a thing. Not the trip, not the money." The moment Julio heard their answer, he lit up with joy. Without hesitation, he jumped in to help the crew get the boat ready for the trip back. On board, they had a small amount of fruit and a limited supply of fresh water. Once the 4 men had finished prepping everything, they untied the ropes holding the Fausto to the dock and set off on their journey back to La Palma. According to eyewitnesses who were at the harbor that morning, the weather was a bit foggy, but nothing too serious. It wasn't the kind of thick fog that made sailing dangerous or impossible. The crew even said themselves, "We're used to this kind of weather. No problem at all. And honestly, even if the fog had been heavier, we're talking about Ramon, Eliberto, and Miguel, first-class sailors who knew these waters like they knew the streets of their own neighborhood. The Fausto left El Hierro in the early hours of July 21st, right around 2:30 a.m. They were expected to arrive back at La Palma by around 10 a.m., but 10 o'clock came and went, with no sign of them. At first, Rafael Acosta, the boat's owner, wasn't too worried. He knew these three men well, trusted them completely. He figured maybe they'd run into a minor mechanical issue. Nothing serious. But then the families of the crew started getting anxious. They came to Rafael asking, "Where are they? Why haven't they arrived?" Trying to reassure them, Rafael replied, "I'll send out another boat along the same route Fausto took. If there's any trouble, if they've broken down or need help, our guys will find them and bring them back safe. It's probably just a technical issue. Happens all the time with fishing boats. We've been through this before." And just like that, a second boat was dispatched immediately to go look for them. But what came next shocked everyone. After several hours at sea, the rescue boat called Rafael over the radio to deliver chilling news. "We searched the entire route, point by point. There's nothing out there, no sign of the boat, and no sign of the crew." That's when Rafael knew something was seriously wrong. Without wasting a second, he contacted the authorities and reported the Fausto as lost at sea. By the very next day, a full-scale search and rescue mission had been launched. Emergency alerts were sent out to every vessel in the area, asking them to join in the effort. But that wasn't all. The Spanish Air Force sent a Casa 2.111 aircraft from Gran Canaria to expand the search from the sky. And despite perfect weather conditions for a search mission, day after day passed, with no trace of the Fausto or the men on board. What started as worry quickly turned into panic. Everyone involved in the search knew the same harsh truth. The crew only had a limited supply of food and water. That meant time was not on their side, not even close. With every hour that passed, rescuers became more and more afraid. Afraid that this was no longer going to be a rescue operation. It was becoming a recovery mission. On July 25th, 4 days after the Fausto left El Hierro, a British ship called Duchess sent an urgent message to the Spanish authorities. In that message, the crew reported that, during their voyage from South America to the Netherlands, they had come across a small fishing boat drifting alone in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. As they got closer, they were able to make out the name painted on the side of the vessel. It was the Fausto. The boat had somehow ended up 190 kilometers west of La Palma, way off its original route. That discovery alone explained why all the previous search missions had come up empty. The Duchess approached the drifting boat, expecting the worst. On board, they found 4 men, dehydrated and hungry, just as you'd expect from anyone lost at sea for days. But what shocked the British crew wasn't their condition. It was their attitude. Despite their situation, the men seemed weirdly upbeat. No signs of panic, no desperation. In fact, the boat itself didn't appear damaged at all. No mechanical failure, no signs of a collision. It looked like it had just set sail. The Duchess immediately radioed the Spanish authorities with the news, and within hours, the story had spread like wildfire. Back on La Palma, the island erupted with joy. People couldn't believe it. They'd been found, and more importantly, they were alive. Hundreds of residents, family, friends, neighbors, flooded the shores in anticipation, ready to welcome their loved ones home. After days of anxiety and heartbreak, the reunion they had prayed for was finally within reach. But, just a few hours after the initial message from the Duchess, a second transmission came through, and it flipped the entire situation upside down. The Duchess crew reported something no one could have expected. "The men aboard the Fausto are refusing to come with us. They told us they don't want to tow back to land. All they're asking for is some supplies, and they say they'll handle the rest on their own." The captain of the Duchess was baffled. "What are you doing all the way out here? How did you end up this far off course? Did your engine fail? Were you dragged by the current?" But the men gave no answers, just polite replies. "Thank you for the offer, but we're fine. We just need some gas, a little food and water, and we'll take care of ourselves." And the weirdest part? Even Julio, the man who had begged to get back home to his sick daughter, didn't seem desperate to return. He acted as if everything was totally under control. The captain of the Duchess later said, "These were men who'd been missing for days, who, if we hadn't run into them, likely would have died from hunger or thirst within a day or two. And yet, when we offered to save them, they turned us down? Something about this doesn't make any sense." Despite multiple attempts to convince them otherwise, the Fausto's crew stood firm. They said, "The boat's in good condition. There's no problem. We just need some fuel, drinking water, some food, and if you have any, a few cigarettes." Eventually, the Duchess gave in. They provided enough fuel for 18 hours of sailing, along with plenty of food and water. And yes, even cigarettes. Then the Fausto took off again, headed back toward La Palma. Before parting ways, the captain of the Duchess radioed the Spanish authorities once more, estimating that, based on their speed and distance, the Fausto should reach La Palma by 7 p.m. that evening. Back on the island, the beaches were now packed wall to wall. Families, neighbors, and hundreds of locals waited eagerly to welcome the crew home. People had already started celebrating. The Fausto is finally coming back. But then, 7 p.m. came and went, and no one arrived. As the crew's families began to worry again, Raphael tried to calm them down. "Don't worry," he said. "I've spoken to the authorities, and they've confirmed everything with the Duchess crew. The men have fuel, food, and water. They probably just hit a small delay." So the families, along with friends and locals, waited for hours, standing by the shore, watching the horizon, hearts pounding, waiting for the Fausto to return. But no one came. The hours dragged on, slow and heavy, and by the time the next morning's sun began to rise, it became clear. The nightmare wasn't over. It was officially announced. The Fausto had gone missing again. And with that announcement, Spain launched the largest maritime search and rescue operation in its history. Planes filled the skies. Naval and civilian ships scoured the waters. Every inch of ocean where the Duchess had last spotted the boat was searched again and again. The effort continued for 2 full weeks. Radar systems scanned without rest. Aircraft circled for hours. And through it all, the families held on to hope, refusing to believe this could be the end. But despite every effort, not a single trace was found. Eventually, the Spanish government had no choice but to declare the search over, and the Fausto's crew legally missing at sea. That legal designation meant what everyone feared. They were presumed dead. But the story still wasn't over. 2 months later, on October 9th that same year, a commercial Italian ship named Anna Di Maio was en route to Venezuela when they spotted a small boat drifting in the open Atlantic. Right away, something felt off. The boat was way too small to be out that far in the ocean. It didn't belong there. As they approached, they realized it was completely abandoned. No one was on board. Then they saw the name written on the side. It was the Fausto. The crew tied a rope to the drifting boat so it wouldn't float away, and 2 sailors climbed aboard to investigate. They called out, hoping someone might respond, but no one did. Surprisingly, the boat was in excellent condition. No cracks, no damage, no signs of a struggle, no holes, no water inside. Nothing suggested it had been through any sort of disaster. It looked like it had set out just yesterday. They stepped into the main cabin, hoping to find the ship's logbook, something every captain uses to document events at sea. But the logbook was missing. Now they were really confused. How could a perfectly intact boat be completely abandoned? Where was the crew? They decided to return to their ship and notify the authorities. But before they left, one of the men said, "Let's check the engine room, just in case." He opened the hatch, and instantly, a horrific smell burst out, hitting them like a wall. One of the men recoiled in shock. Inside was a body, a man lying on his back, decomposed but oddly preserved. The harsh conditions had partially mummified him. Panicked, they searched the rest of the boat, but found no other bodies. Just that one, and beside it, a small notebook. They returned to their ship and opened the notebook. Most of the pages were missing, 28 in total, ripped out. All that remained were 2 pages, one in the front, filled with strange numbers and calculations, and one in the back, a handwritten farewell letter. The crew of the Ana de Mayo handed over the boat, the body, and the notebook to the authorities, triggering a brand new investigation into what would become one of the most chilling maritime disappearances of all time. The captain of the Ana de Mayo immediately contacted Spanish authorities and informed them that the Fausto had been found. He explained that the boat, the body, and the notebook would all be towed to Venezuela, where they'd be handed over to the proper authorities for investigation. The crew secured the Fausto with ropes, attaching it firmly to the rear of their ship, and began the long journey across the ocean. Everything seemed fine, until 2 days later. That's when Spanish authorities received devastating news. While towing the Fausto, the boat suddenly flipped and sank. It went down so fast, the ropes snapped before the crew of the Ana de Mayo could do anything to save it. The sailors swore they had followed every protocol, that they'd done everything right. What happened, they claimed, was some bizarre, unexplainable accident. Whatever the reason, the result was the same. The Fausto was gone, and with it, the body. The only thing left from this entire mystery was the small notebook. After all the official procedures were completed, the notebook was sent back to La Palma, where it was presented to the families of the 4 men who had been aboard the Fausto. And then came the twist. The notebook didn't belong to any of the 3 fishermen. It belonged to Julio. The moment his wife saw it, she recognized his handwriting and the notebook itself. Julio had worked as a mechanic, and this was the same book he used to track bills and repairs for his clients. It was now confirmed. The only body found aboard the Fausto was Julio's. His wife opened to the last page, and what she read sent shivers down her spine. It was a farewell message, a will. Julio had written it knowing the end was near. In it, he told her how to access his life insurance, details about the properties he owned, instructions on how to sell them. And at the very bottom, in tiny handwriting, he wrote, Never tell our son what happened to me. This is the fate God chose for me. I love you. But instead of solving the mystery, that message only deepened it. If Julio knew he was dying, if he had time to calmly write a will, then why didn't he say anything about what actually happened on that boat? Why no mention of the crew? No clue about how they got lost? No explanation of what they went through? Unless he did write everything, and those missing 28 pages were torn out. So who removed them? And what happened to the rest of the crew? Why did all 4 men on the Duchess insist they were fine and refuse rescue, despite being clearly in danger? So many questions, and not a single answer. The most accepted theory? That a series of small malfunctions caused mounting stress, leading the crew to make poor decisions one after the other, until they lost their way and perished. But many refuse to believe that. There are too many details that don't add up, and that's why other, darker theories have emerged. Was the crew hijacked? Did they witness something they weren't supposed to? Were they caught up in something criminal, maybe even involving the government? But the most chilling theory, the one that captured the imagination of so many, was the pirate theory. According to this version, the Fausto was attacked by pirates. Ramon, Eliberto, and Miguel were killed, and their bodies dumped into the sea. Julio? He managed to hide in the engine room, locking himself inside. But the pirates eventually broke in and killed him too. During the time Julio was hiding, he scribbled everything into his notebook. But once the pirates found it, they tore out the pages that exposed the truth. So, when the Duchess encountered the Fausto, it wasn't the original crew at all. It was the pirates, pretending to be them. That's why they refused help. That's why they only asked for supplies. They had no intention of going back to La Palma. They just needed enough fuel to disappear and move on to their next target. And that is the end of this story. A tale stranger than fiction, yet every detail of it is real, recorded in the archives of Spanish maritime history. Now the question is, what do you believe? Do you buy into the pirate theory? Or do you have a different explanation? Let us know in the comments. And if you were intrigued by this story, then you have to check out the mystery of the Dodelston Messages, the only documented real-life case of time travel, or the chilling case of the Green River Killer, a real-life serial killer whose capture seemed impossible. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that bell icon, and share the story with someone who loves mystery and suspense. We'll see you in the next one. Until then, stay curious.